Spoilers ahead. Horror gaming is massive and very popular. So popular that the genre is actually oversaturated, with many AAA and indie studios making them regularly. Even though many of these games can be the same old horror formula used over and over, every so often a brilliant game will break through. But when these games seem to be abandoned after a few years with no sequel in sight, fans are left wondering why. We need more. So with that in mind, today me and Wannabe Reviewer, say hi,
Hey everybody!
are going to share with you 7 abandoned horror game franchises that we think deserve more love.
Number 1. Alan Wake. This 2010 horror title developed by Remedy Entertainment follows Alan Wake, a best-selling thriller novelist who travels to the small mountain town of Bright Falls, Washington for a vacation at the behest of his wife, Alice. Initially upset when he learns that the true purpose of the trip is to get him over his writer's block and into therapy, things soon take a turn when Alice disappears, seemingly abducted by a mysterious force. Even stranger is that while searching for his missing wife, Alan begins to experience events from a novel he cannot remember writing coming to life. And so, with a dark presence stalking the small town of Bright Falls, this perfectly paced horror game inspired by Stephen King will push Alan Wake to the brink of sanity as he fights to push back the darkness, save his love, and unravel the mystery of just what the hell is going on. Now, despite receiving positive reviews, a web series, a spin-off title, and additional DLC story content, the Alan Wake franchise has been seemingly dormant since 2012. Though a sequel was in the works at one point, this eventually got scrapped, with many ideas transferring over to Remedy's next title, Quantum Break. Still, all may not be lost for our Stephen King as protagonist, seeing as how 2019's Control has many Easter eggs and references to the Alan Wake universe, hinting that the story may come back in one way or another.
Number 2. Dino Crisis. After Capcom's huge success of Resident Evil 1, 2 and 3, they decided to change things up and swap out the zombies for dinosaurs. However, instead of the pre-rendered backgrounds of the Resident Evil games that preceded it, Dino Crisis used an original real-time engine with 3D environments, helping the game to look more realistic for the time and more atmospheric. The first game in the series was a critical and commercial success, with the PlayStation version selling over 2.4 million copies. The game was often dubbed Resident Evil but with dinosaurs, which is not a bad thing at all. After the success of Dino Crisis 2 was released by Capcom in 2000. Dino Crisis 2 was a step in a different direction, with the game changing from a survival horror game, where you only have a few dinosaurs at a time to escape from, to an action-adventure arcade-like game with a lot of dinosaurs running at you. However, even after the change, the game received decent reviews and sold at 1.9 million copies on the PlayStation. In between the 3 years of 2000 and 2003, Capcom released 2 spin-off games which had ties into Dino Crisis. These were Dino Stalker and Dino Crisis Dungeon in Chaos. Dino Stalker is a horror light gun shooter game made exclusively for the PlayStation 2. It is a spin-off of the Resident Evil lighter gun shooter games, but based on the story of Dino Crisis series. And you can see already that the series was in decline. I mean, just look at this gameplay. But that's just my personal opinion. It's very similar to what Time Crisis was like, but the problem here is that Dino Crisis was actually a completely different game at the start. Up next came Dino Crisis Dungeon in Chaos. In short, this is a first-person shooter mobile game published by the now defunct Mobile Capcom in 2003. I'd like to say things get better from here onwards, but no, they definitely do not. Also in 2003 came Dino Crisis 3. Here we go. I don't even know how to begin with this game. For starters, this is the first game cover not to actually feature a dinosaur, instead opting for a spaceship. The game is obviously set in space in the year 2548. The dinosaurs are not real dinosaurs, they are mutations created from DNA extracted from various dinosaur species. Apparently, during early production, the game was going to be set in New York City, under attack from various dinosaurs. However, due to the 2011 attacks, the team shied away from this idea. But God knows why they decided on space. I'm having flashbacks to Jason X, the Friday the 13th film set in space, which is just shit as well. Okay, breathe, right. This game was due to be released on the PS2 and Xbox, but the PS2 version was cancelled. so the game ended up as an exclusive for Xbox, which is just strange when all the other games beforehand were only made for the PlayStation. The gameplay is similar to Dino Crisis 2, with that arcade feeling coming through. You have a jetpack so you can travel around the space station as you battle your way through the hordes of dinosaurs and try to escape. If you're a real fan of the series, however, you won't bother playing this. I certainly haven't. Also, just a heads up before we move on, keep an eye out for the fan-made remake that's out there, celebrating the 20th anniversary. It needs some work still, but it looks really promising. Hopefully we can get something official soon.
Number 3, Dead Space. Referred to by many as one of the scariest games ever made, 2008's Dead Space is a true work of art when it comes to its inspired setting and truly frightening atmosphere. Set in an interstellar mining ship called the USG Ishimura, the players put into the shows of an engineer named Isaac Clarke, who must fight off crazed zombie space monsters called necromorphs. Featuring an inventory screen that leaves you open to attack as you browse, lacking a traditional HUD in favor of more subtle status displays, and filled with enemies who must be torn apart instead of destroyed with the traditional headshot, this is a title that pushed boundaries to be a truly nail-biting experience. Though the game spawned a ton of spin-off material and a monster of a sequel in 2011's Dead Space 2 that also received critical acclaim, 2013's Dead Space 3 received far more mixed reviews due to its focus on action over horror and a messy story. This, of course, led to poor sales, and though EA and the series' developer Visceral Games still expressed interest in a sequel, Visceral shut down in 2017, leaving the future of the franchise unclear. While EA could easily put another studio in charge of a new installment, this is we make all of our money through microtransactions we are talking about, so who knows if we will ever see another title.
Alone in the Dark. Known as the forefather of the modern survival horror gaming formula, Alone in the Dark was released back in 1992. I know what you're thinking, wow, that looks crap. And yeah, you're right, it does, but back in 1992, this was immense. See if you can spot the similarities to games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill while I describe this game. So, you start the game as either Emily Hartwood or Edward Carnby, looking for a piano in the mansion of Jeremy Hartwood, who has committed suicide. Edward is collecting it for the dealer, while Emily believes in its secret drawer will be a suicide note from her father. You should be able to tell straight away how other games copied the style from this one. The fixed camera angles, polygonal characters over pre-rendered backgrounds, on-screen text, inventory management and puzzle solving elements, they're all here. This game was way ahead of its time, and was actually one of the first 3D survival horror games which they were awarded the Guinness World Record for. Creatures will jump out at you through windows or doors, which keeps you tense and nervous throughout. This game isn't actually combat heavy, and you can avoid a lot of its creatures. After its critical acclaim upon its release, Infogrames went on to make a sequel which was released in 1993, but slightly before that they made Jack in the Dark, a small game made during the second game's production. Jack in the Dark was used as a promotional game distributed at Christmas 1993, just before the second installment's release. It is a short adventure featuring the young child Grace Saunders. During Halloween, she enters a small toy store after dark and gets locked inside. There, the toys are alive and Grace must save Santa Claus from an evil Jack in the Box. Then, shortly after this, Alone in the Dark 2 hit stores. Even after the huge success of the first game, Infogrames decided to change things up for the second installment, making this game more action orientated than the first. This is obvious from the start when you gain a Tommy gun and have to blow your way through towards the mansion. The creatures here are green and zombie-like in appearance, and are no way near as creepy as the walking corpses of the first game. They actually behave like ordinary people, arming themselves with guns and shooting at the player. This game actually had added locations as well compared to the original. Alone in the Dark 2 was popular and generally well received, even if some people were annoyed by the change of horror to action adventure. The following year in 1994, Alone in the Dark 3 came. Apparently not frightened again to change ideas, this time Infogrames set the game in the Wild West. Edward is back, investigating the disappearance of a film crew and Emily Hartwood, whilst fighting off a town filled with zombie cowboy outlaws, who attack him with revolvers and rifles. Halfway through the game, the zombies become the more traditionally shambling zombies we're all used to. And also this time the developers attempted to make the game easier than before, because the second game was actually really hard at times. Each game in the original trilogy was worse than the one before it. It might be why the next Alone in the Dark didn't come out until 2001. That, and that the game engine used was fast becoming outdated, and that they would need to reinvest in a new one to keep up with other games being released on the soon to be released PlayStation. Capcom, however, took advantage of this new platform and the lack of any new game coming out in the Alone in the Dark series by releasing Resident Evil, using many of the mechanics from Alone in the Dark but making it their own. After seeing this, Infogrames have released an enhanced port of Alone in the Dark 2 under the name of Alone in the Dark Jack is Back, or Alone in the Dark One-Eyed Jack's Revenge in the United States, which was released in 1996 for the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. However, these games are not well received due to, even though they were an enhanced version and improved, they were still dated compared to the Resident Evil and other games being newly developed for the PlayStation. The New Nightmare was deemed a reboot of the series, and was the first time a game would be developed for console release for multiple platforms. This game was a return to form for the originally horror-themed series, again becoming about survival horror once more, thank God. Edward Carnby's best friend and partner, Charles Fisk, has been found dead off the coast of Shadow Island, a mysterious island near the coast of Massachusetts. Carnby's investigation quickly leads him to Frederick Johnson, who informs him of Fisk's search for the 3 ancient tablets with abilities to unlock incredible and dangerous power. Johnson pleads with Carnby to take the place of Fisk and reopen the investigation in order to recover the tablets. Like the original, you can pick between 2 protagonists. Carnby's side of the plot is based mainly on fighting monsters, while Adeline's is puzzle based. This game received generally favourable reviews, but after a long 7 years, next came Alone in the Dark in 2008. Don't let the title confuse you, this isn't a remake of the awesome original. Okay, bear with me here because here's the plot. Alright, here we go. The game begins with Edward Carnby recovering from amnesia after an exorcism performed on him by a group of occultists led by a guy called Crowley. A guard is instructed to take him to the roof to execute him, only to be dragged away and slaughtered by the unseen force. He wanders the collapsing building in search of an exit, witnessing several people being killed in a similar fashion as the guard, as well as a young woman being possessed by a demon which claims to know his past. After battling with the entity, he meets art dealer Sarah Flaws. They make their way to the basement parking garage where they meet Paddington, the occultist who performed Edward's exorcism, and an old apprentice and friend of Carnby's. Paddington explains the nature of the Philosopher's Stone and Crawley's desire to unleash its evil power. It's just a load of shit really, I'm sorry, but it's not good. It has some good game mechanics like being able to combine objects to make new weapons, put out fires in first person mode, and fire bullets, which is all just ruined by the mechanics, which by the way copy Resident Evil 4's over the soldier point of view, and of course the shit show that storyline. I mean, just look at it, how is that possible? Up next was Alone in the Dark Illumination, and we've made it. We've made it to the end of the shit show because they actually made this game for some strange, God knows why reason. Well, we know why, money. But anyway, it's like they were actually trying to hate their own series and were trying to suffocate it to death with a pillow. Alone in the Dark Illumination, an online co-op shooter. I mean, how is that alone in the dark? You're not alone. Yes, there is a single player campaign, sure, and the game does have some good game mechanics that are true to the older games, like how the monsters can only be killed when a light source is on them. Sure, okay, not bad, but it's still an online shooter. They really did give up with this one. Clearly just a money grabbing scheme using the franchise's name for profit. The game has some very boring objectives, stuff like repair this or find this to open this shit. Which happens in horror games, I know that, but this just feels so wrong and out of place in the online shooter. You can upgrade your characters to gain like a whole fucking 5% speed increase or 5% quicker reload time, and actually, fuck it, it's an insult to Alone in the Dark. No wonder it's been abandoned. Someone needs to fix this mess. Moving on.
Number 5. Clock Tower. The Clock Tower series is a weird one in that it has had 3 different developers over its 4-game run, has had 2 titles named the same thing, and contains a game that is seen as non-canon in Japan. Despite the weirdness though, I still find the series to have an interesting premise overall, with a pretty memorable antagonist. At its core, the series is all about survival horror, with the first 3 games being point-and-click adventure games with survival horror elements, and the 4th game being pure survival horror. Throughout the entire series, gameplay is generally centered on exploring the environment to solve puzzles, or, when pursued by enemies such as the iconic Scissorman, hiding and escaping. Panic mode is an interesting feature of the series that, when triggered due to fear of being alarmed, leads to the playable character becoming difficult to control, and therefore, more likely to be killed. Most of the titles also feature a variety of multiple endings. Despite being considered instrumental in establishing the horror game genre, the series has not seen a new installment since 2002, though 2005's Haunting Ground and 2016's Nightcry are seen as spiritual successors of sorts. While one has to wonder why a series that seems to have such a legacy behind it has had so much trouble getting more entries, I think this does tie back to what I mentioned near the beginning of the entry about stuff like jumping between different developers. With it last being touched by Capcom, who is busy with its other franchises, who knows if they see making more games in the series worth it. This is a shame, of course, because with how well Capcom has brought stuff like Resident Evil to current gen, just imagine what they could do with Clock Tower and the totally creepy Scissorman.
Silent Hill. Now, before I start, just look at this picture. There have been a lot of Silent Hill games. 8 in the main series, and even more if you include all of the spin-offs. So today, we'll just concentrate on the main games. Silent Hill follows Harry Mason as he searches for his missing adopted daughter in the fictional American town of Silent Hill. Stumbling upon a cult conducting a ritual to revive a deity it worships, he soon discovers her true origin. The game cleverly uses fog to hide rendering issues due to limitations of the PS1 hardware, which really helps with the atmospheric of the game, and probably why Silent Hill is often regarded as a defining title in the survival horror genre. Silent Hill was then followed by Silent Hill 2 in 2001. This time round, the game follows James Sunderland searching for his deceased wife in Silent Hill after having received a letter from her informing him that she is waiting for him there. Silent Hill 2 is not a direct sequel to the first game, but it is often considered the greatest horror game ever made, and among the greatest video games of all time. In 2003, Silent Hill 3 was released, set 17 years after the events of Silent Hill, in which Harry Mason defeats the god of the town cult and is given a baby girl to care for. Silent Hill 3 focuses on Heather Mason, a teenage girl raised by Harry in Portland. She discovers that the cult plans to use her to birth their god, and becomes caught in a conflict within the cult. Then Silent Hill The Room hit stores in 2004. Unlike the previous installments, which was set in the town of Silent Hill, this game is set in the fictional town of South Ashfield, and follows Henry Townsend as he attempts to escape from his locked down apartment. During the course of the game, Henry explores a series of supernatural worlds and finds himself in conflict with an undead serial killer named Walter Sutherland. Though generally praised by many, its departure from the typical features of the series received a range of reactions from fans, some not good. 3 years later, in 2007, saw Silent Hill Origins being released. This is a prequel that follows trucker Travis Grady, who becomes trapped in Silent Hill after rescuing a girl from a burning house. During his quest to find the fate of the burned girl, he encounters characters from previous installments and is forced to face his past. This was yet another Silent Hill game with good reviews though. Silent Hill Homecoming came next in 2008. It follows Alex Shepard, a soldier who has returned from a war overseas. Alex discovers upon his arrival that his father has gone missing, his mother has become catatonic, and no one can provide the whereabouts of his younger brother, Joshua. The game chronicles Alex's search to find his missing brother. This is the first time a non-Japanese company has developed a Silent Hill game, but the game only received okay reviews. Silent Hill Shattered Memories came in 2009, which is a reimagining of the first installment. It retains the premise of the original game, that Harry Mason's quest to find his missing daughter in Silent Hill, but this time it's set in what appears to be a different fictional universe, following a different plot with characters from the first game appearing altered alongside new ones. This game is more action orientated than the others before, and loses its sense of the horror and atmospheric of the originals that made it so good in the first place. The game, however, still reviewed well. Silent Hill Downpour is the 8th installment in the series, which follows Murphy Pendleton, a prisoner who is stranded. Silent Hill Downpour was the 8th installment in the series when it came out in 2012. The game follows Murphy Pendleton, a prisoner who is stranded in Silent Hill after his prison transport vehicle crashes. This was a return to the series' survival horror exploration roots after the action-heavy Silent Hill Homecoming, but only received mixed and average reviews. Right, now that's the boring part done. Here is my favourite part. Well, favourite only of course, second to Silent Hill 2, because that game was awesome. But of course here I'm going to talk about Silent Hills, aka PT to most. At Gamescom 2014, an interactive teaser titled PT, which was short for Playable Teaser, was released on the PlayStation Store for the PlayStation 4. Starring Hollywood director Del Toro and featuring actor Norman Reedus, the game looked incredible and the hype around the game was immense. But however, sadly, on April 27, 2015, Konami cancelled the Silent Hills game. The PT teaser was also pulled from the PlayStation Store and is no longer available for download. The popularity of this short teaser is insane and has prompted many indie developers to make their own versions online. Check out sites like itch.io or GameJolt to try them out for yourself for free, or watch some of my other videos on them. I've made loads. Because unfortunately, that's the closest we'll ever get. Fuck you, Konami, we need more.
Number 7. Parasite Eve. My last entry on this list is a game series that has become more horrifying over time, though probably not for the reasons intended. First hitting the scene back in 1998, Square's action role-playing survival horror title Parasite Eve was a unique game that took the battle system of Final Fantasy VII and applied it to a modern-day setting in which police officer Brea must use her mitochondria-based powers to stop Eve, a woman who plans to destroy the human race through spontaneous human combustion. Filled with horrifying mutations and plenty of scenes of people on fire, Parasite Eve was a must-have PS1 title. This was of course followed up by 1998's Parasite Eve 2, that despite dropping the battle system in favor of more traditional survivor horror controls, still did quite well with fans and critics alike. Though I wish I could say that the series ended on this high note, there are unfortunately some fates worse than death, or in this case, complete character assassination. You see, after going quiet for quite some time, this series reappeared as The Third Birthday, a 2010 PSP exclusive that drops all horror elements as instead a third-person shooter. Starring an Brea with amnesia, gone is the badass cop trying to save the world with crazy pseudoscience powers, and instead we get a meek waifu who takes battle damage and communicates through a series of moans. No, seriously. With the release of this third, cursed entry in the series, all word of the franchise has gone quiet, and Square Enix has seemingly moved on. Still, fans everywhere hope that maybe one day, we can at the very least get a remake of the first two titles, similar to the Resident Evil treatment.
And that's been our list. Do you agree with the games we've mentioned? Think we missed off some brilliant horror game? Let us know below. Thank you from both of us for watching. Go check out Wannbe Reviewer, who reviews films, obviously, but also other gaming lists like this one, and looking into obscure Wii games. Subscribe if you enjoyed this, and take care. Bye.